भोक्तित्वे परिकल्पितस्य सुभृतो वर्त्मा पुनर्जन्मनाम् आत्मेत्यात्मविदां क्रतुश्चेजतां भर्तामरज्योतिषां लोकानां प्रलयोदयस्थितिविभुश्चानेकथाय श्रुतौ वाचं नः स दधातु नैककिरणस्त्रैलोक्यदीपो रविः। ॐ आदित्याय च सोमाय मंगलाय बुधाय च गुरुशुक्रशनिभ्यश्च राहवे केतवे नमः। ॐ सर्वचैतन्यरूपां ताम् आद्यां विद्यां च धीमहि बुद्धिं यानः प्रचोदयात्। हरिः ॐ। श्री महागणाधिपतये नमः। श्री महासरस्वत्यै नमः। श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। Namaskaram. Salutations to all. On behalf of this Vedic Yajna Center, I take this divine privilege to do Panchagashravanam for the traditional Hindu almanac based on the Lunisolar calendar to predict the generalized results and also the zodiac sign transit results for all the 12 zodiac signs for the Shubhakruth Nama Samvatsaram year 2022 to 2023. I thank Pandit Samavedula Chandrasekhar Sarma for giving me this divine opportunity. As per the Hindu Lunisolar calendar, the new year for USA is going to start on April 1st, that is Friday, 2022. The name of the year is Shubhakruth, which means everything is going to be auspicious as far as possible, and we will be seeing many new happenings and many new changes in the society in the coming future. So, as per the Hindu tradition, on the New Year day, there is a ongoing call as Panchagashravanam, which means we will be rendering the almanac and try to forecast how likely is it good or bad for the forthcoming year, and how is it going to impact the social life as well as the general individual life as a whole for the planetary transits that are going to happen in this coming year. So, as the name goes, it is Shubakruth, and Sri Kalyana Gunavaham Ripuharam Duswapnya Doshapaham Ganga Snana Visesha Punya Phaladam Godana Tulyam Drunam Ayurvruddhidamuttamam Subhakaram Santana Sampatpradam Nana Karma Susadhanam Samuchitam Panchangamakarnyatam. What this verse says is Panchagashravanam, that is, listening to this almanac rendering of what is going to happen and the forecast results, what are the society changes, what are the natural calamities, what might happen on the New Year day. It gives you auspiciousness as well as a foresightedness of what is likely going to happen, what type of measures you can take well in advance so that you can be prepared if it's an emergency kind of situation, or it can be well known if the market is going to be good, if the business or the trading sector, if the stock market, if the business is, how likely is it profitable this year? Are there any new happenings or changes coming? How well can we benefit from that in case of any bad happening which is to be predicted? How likely can we try to avoid it by advanced planning? All these kind of future forecasts and the advanced planning is told on this almanac rendering session. So it is very auspicious as this planning helps you how to shape your life and how you plan your lifestyle for this following year. What does this Hindu almanac or the Panchangam contains? Tithirvarancha nakshatram yoga karanamevacha Panchangam iti vikyatam lokanam upakarakaha Tithescha sriyamapnoti varadayushyavardhanam Nakshatradudharate papam yogadroga nivaranam Karanat karya siddhischa Panchanga phalamuttamam. The Hindu almanac, the primary components of this are Tithi, Varam, Nakshatram, Yogam, Karanam, which means the phase of the moon, which is called as the lunar phases. Every day, what is the lunar phase for today? All those details are being published in this Hindu almanac, as well as the weekday and also the star. The star is nothing but based on the sidereal transit of the moon. Which star is it transiting in on that particular day and that particular time? Of those details will be published in this almanac. as well as yoga and karana. These are formed by the distances between the sun and moon, like how close they are together and how far they are together, based on a particular degree of separation, based on their angular separation degree value. There has some mathematical equations. So based on those, we'll know which kind of yoga it is today and what is the name of the karanam it is today. So these 5 are very important because today is just Sriyama Apnoti. Every day, by looking up in this Hindu almanac of what is the Tithi today, what is the weekday today, what is the Nakshatra and Yoga and Karana, what kind of benefits does the humans reap, is today is just Sriyama Apnoti. Financial benefits, auspiciousness will arise by knowing every day what is the particular lunar phase, what Tithi it is on that particular day. Varad Ayushyavardhanam. By knowing every day what weekday it is, it increases your lifespan. It helps you how to plan the day in advance so that you try to lead a safe life. Nakshatra uddharate papam. So by knowing the sidereal transit as well as the star in which the moon is, it helps you to remove your sins of any past misdeeds that you might have done knowingly or unknowingly. Because based on the star transit, there are some kind of separate worships prescribed if somebody wants to remove their sins, or how to do an auspicious activity, on which star do you have to start it, or which star should you accomplish it, or on which particular star date which you must not do it. All these kind of details you will know by knowing the star. Yoga droga nivaranam. So by knowing this yoga, it helps you maintain a healthy life. You can try to avoid some upcoming diseases which you might be attacked to knowingly or unknowingly. Karanat karya siddhischa panchanga phalamuttamam. By knowing the particular karanam, you will know the karya siddhi. Karya siddhi means how likely an event is to be succeeded or it might not succeed. The probability of the successful event forecast. It can be known by the karanam. So if you start any event on a particular good karanam, it will surpass for a long time and it helps you maintain that balance or the profit ratio for a very long time. But if you start some very important events on a very bad karanam, it gives you very negative results, as well as it might completely destroy your business, or it might even bring you very obstacles. So these are the primary elements which a Hindu almanac contains. Apart from this, there are many other things, such as the transit of the planets, how likely any natural calamities or any unknowing events might happen, how is going to be the socio-economic situation, the political situation, how are the public going to react to the upcoming events. All these type of things will be slightly predicted in this Hindu almanac. Apart from this, it will also contain the auspicious timings, the muhurtas, which are very important for events like marriages or thread ceremonies, or gruha pravesh, like housewarming ceremonies, or baby showers. For all these kind of different events which the humans have in their lifetime, for those, the auspicious timings, at which time should they be conducted, on which good days should you get married, which days are favorable for a particular person to do a particular job, or to start a new business, or to join the job, kind of things. So these auspicious days also will be listed in this Hindu almanac. And also, apart from this planetary transits, what are the kind of eclipses or the natural events or the planetary phenomenon happening in space, and how likely are they going to affect the civilization of mankind? And also the daily events of the festivals and the transit charts. These are the main constituents apart from this transit results contained in the Hindu almanac. For the new year, called as Shubhakruth, the presiding deity of this new year is Jataveda Samideham Shubhakrunamakam Sada Andolika Samarudham Khadga Khetadharam Subham. The presiding deity of the Shubhakruth year is Jataveda Samideham. It means fire god, or you can say Agni Devata, because In the Vedic scriptures, we refer to him as Agnir Devata, Agni Devata, Jata Vedase. All these constitute the fire element. So the primary deity which you should worship is the sacred fire. You should be very devotional towards it. You should worship it at regular events. You can do it in all kinds of temples. So as this is the prescribed deity for this year, it also means that whoever are trying to be in the wrong path, or whoever try to do any illegal things, they will be easily caught, because the presiding deity is fire god. So you should try to lead a very restricted and a strict life, a disciplined lifestyle. Now coming to these Navanayakas, or popularly known as the 9 leaders or 9 ministers, you can say, or the 9 main ministers which are needed for this administration part. As based on this Hindu tradition and this lunisolar calendar, these particular Navanayakas are for the USA and Canada as well, because as that continent, North America, is in the Western Hemisphere, the Navanayakas, the ruling ministers, they differ from each place to place. They have to be considered based on that particular location you are in, and when the sun transits into different sidereal zodiac signs, as well as when the new year is going to start for that particular area. As these differ from country to country, they're basically separated. The ones which we are going to be discussing about now are particularly with respect to USA and Canada. So the Navanayakas, as the new year, the Chaitra Sukla Pajami, means the starting lunar phase for this new year is going to start on a Friday. So the Lord of the year, or the king, it's Venus, Sukra. As the Lord of the year is Sukra, there will be heavy rains, and also the animal husbandry industry, the dairy industry, horticulture, as well as this animal industry, it's going to see very huge profits. You can see some positive results coming forth, because in the past years we have known that due to this pandemic, the dairy industry was affected a lot. A lot of milk and cheese produce has been wasted, as well as the yield has been wasted a lot. But this year, since Sukra is the Lord of the year, the dairy industry is going to see tremendous changes. The animal husbandry is going to be very profitable. And also, there will be increase in the cattle and benefit from cattle. From either it could be meat based on the cattle, or the subsidiary products based on the cattle. So they're going to see a very huge profits. The industry will be more profitable than the last year. Also, there will be increase in the lust among people, because Sukra is particularly known for increasing lust in humans. So this we can see as a particular thing in the social psychology if we try to observe for this forthcoming year. The minister, or the advisory minister, is Buddha, Mercury. As Mercury and the Lord of the year, Venus, are both friends, Buddha always tries to do good advices, tries to give good advices. But Buddha himself as a minister is not such a great person, because he's very young in nature. He tries to take very bold decisions. He tries to move in the wrong directions, if not particularly tamed. So as Buddha being the minister, there will be increase in crime rate. Illegal activities are going to increase very well. And also in the youth, particularly in the young generation, you can see tremendous changes, the way they react to a situation, the kind of the thoughts which they're thinking. They'll be quite different from the way they used to be from the previous generations. So particularly in the young generations, a lot of changes are going to happen. How likely they're going to react to a particular situation, what are they kind of expecting, how are they reacting, all these things, we'll see a lot of changes. And the commander of armed forces is Kuja, Mars. Mars is a pretty aggressive planet. It's kind of like how you see in a nuclear reactor, some isotopes are pretty reactive in nature. Just like that, Mars being an aggressive planet, he being the commander of the armed forces is likely going to increase wars. So this year, USA might take part in some of the wars happening in the globe. And also, there will be increase in diseases. As we have seen that either from the first wave or the second wave. There is a lot of continuous death rate happening, and also a lot of people getting infected with many diseases. Either it might be due to the ongoing waves, or it might be due to some temporary viral infections. But we have seen that the health is being particularly affected, and a lot of diseases are increasing day by day. Since Kuja or Mars is the chief of commander of the armed forces, there will be increase in diseases, there will be decrease in the yield, particularly the vegetation crops might get affected a lot. Also, the forest fires. Mars, as a commander of armed forces, increases forest fires. As far as I remember, I think it's in 2020, we have seen a lot of forest fires happening in USA. Apart from the ones in Russia, in Siberia, the forest fires, in USA in that particular year, 2020, we have seen that in California, maybe around like 30 million hectares, I think, as far as I can recollect, we have seen that big forest fires. And just like that, this year also, it is very likely that a lot of forest fires will happen. So the forest department has to be prepared well in advance how well we can tackle these situations. Do we have the right amount of staff in case of any emergency happening? How likely is this going to happen, and in which places it might happen? That we have to do a further research and study on that. But this year we have to be prepared for the likely event of the forest fires and how to tackle them. And also the wars might increase a lot. The war-like situation with neighboring countries or some other countries located in different places, the political stability situation as well as the war situation is going to be very bad. There will be a lot of chaos happening around because the Lord of the Year is Venus and the commander is Mars. Both are not at all friendly planets. Both are like repelling each other. So the political situation will be in a different scenario from this armed forces situation. And both don't act in harmony to each other. Both try to repel always. So both always contradict each other. They go in different directions, which ultimately leads to a chaotic situation. So the administration as well as the armed forces has to keep this in mind and try to see how well diplomatically a balanced relation they can maintain, how well they can go far in this foreign relationships. And the Lord of the crops is Saturn. So Saturn being Lord of the crop, it's a pretty bad thing because it doesn't favor many types of crops, but it does favor particular segments of crops, particularly the black pulses. So the kind of crops which yield a black variant of the vegetables or pulses, those we can see an increase in their yield, like black sesame or black gram, all kind of these. But apart from this, those particularly belonging to other types of colors, those we might see a very decrease in the yield and produce. And also there will be fear from the government to the public. So a kind of social unrest also most likely is going to happen. The Lord of the winter crops, the second crop season, is Jupiter, Guru. So Jupiter being the Lord of the second season crops is a very favorable planet, and the yield and likely produce is also going to increase. The direct produce is also going to increase a lot. And this year, as far as the planetary situation is, the animal husbandry and the dairy industry is going to be in pretty good shape. The Lord of the fluids and prizes is Mercury. So Mercury or Buddha being Lord of the Arghadipati or the Lord of the prizes is not much of a favorable thing in all kind of situations. We can see an increase in rain, an increase in prices a lot of fluctuation in the prices is likely going to happen. And also the younger generation particularly might face some unemployment issues, or it might also likely to react in a different kind of situations, particularly some weird situations. Also, the young generation is going to get affected due to this economic instability a lot, particularly in this year. The Lord of the clouds or the weather forecast is Mercury as well, that is Buddha. He being the Lord of the weather, we can see a lot of increase in the thunderstorms and lightnings. lightning strikings are more likely going to happen a lot in this year than the previous year. Also, the weather is going to be quite unpredictable. We can see a lot of blizzards and storms happening, particularly belonging to the central USA. If we observe, a lot of this unpredictable weather forecasts are going to happen, and there will be a lot of mishappening based on the weather situations. And the lord of the fruits and vegetables is Chandra, moon. So moon being lord of this, it's going to be a pretty stable for the vegetable prices, and it will be happy for the farmers. And also the oils, sugars, honey, milk, yogurt, the dairy industry, these prices will be particularly pretty stable. They will be profitable both to the buyer, the consumer, as well as the seller. And the lord of the minerals is Shani, Saturn. Saturn being lord of the minerals, it is more likely going to decrease the prices. So this year in particular, the silver, gems, or pearl, or different kind of minerals, gold and silver particularly, those prices are going to go down a lot. And that business is not much profitable this year. The trading of those things, it might bring heavy losses as well. But for what prices is it good? If you consider Saturn, the oil industry is going to be very, very profitable this year. Whoever is working in the oil refineries or owning those industries, those dealers, they're going to be profiting a lot due to the oil prices. We can see an increase in the oil prices as well. And the iron ore is going to increase its prices. The industry is going to be very, very profitable this year. Also, like black color clothing industry is also going to see a new trend. So if you try to do a statistical analysis for this year, the black color cloths are going to be selling a lot. They're going to be more profitable this year. So these are the Navanikas, particularly for USA and Canada. And for this year, if we consider the Varsha Chakra, Varsha Chakra means the planetary situation as at the time of the new year start. So whenever the new year starts at that particular time, for this year it's April 1st, 2022 at 2:25 a.m. EST. At that time, Chaitra Shukla Pajami, or the Hindu Lunisolar calendar new year, is going to start at that particular minute. At that particular situation for the capital of USA, if we draw a horoscope, it gives us as it's a Sagittarius is the ascendant or the Dhanur Lagna, and in the second house, that is Capricorn. All these positions are based on the sidereal transits of the planets. So Sagittarius is the ascendant, and in the Capricorn second house, we have Mars and Saturn. Also in the third house, we have Venus and Jupiter. The fourth house, we have Sun, Moon, and Mercury, Ravi, Chandra, Buddha. And in the sixth house, we have Rahu, and in the 12th house, we have Ketu. Those are nothing but the north node and the south node of the moon. So based on this particular horoscope generated for the start of the new year, the Hindu scriptures advise how we can predict for many events which are likely going to happen in this country. So based on this, based on the first house results for the ascendant in the third house, so the political situation might be pretty unstable, and they will always be thinking about the neighboring countries and how to maintain the relations with the neighbors, and also how well we can try to be stabilizing the economy, how well we can try to be a stable government, because there will be a lot of political unrest and instability going on in this year in the USA. Also the diplomatic ties, how are we maintaining them? How is the friendship with other countries? All these things will be seeing particular changes. Based on the second house, as the Mars and Saturn are situated just 2 degrees apart in Capricorn, we'll see a huge revenue as well as huge expenditure. The 12th Lord Mars, Kuja, is connected to the second Lord Saturn. So based on that, the economic situations in the country are going to improve a lot. You can see huge revenue generation in the country. But at the same time, there will be huge expenses. Many debts will be cleared, and also there will be huge expenses. So it's kind of like a no profit, no loss kind of situation where you get a lot, but you still spend a lot. And also the income is more likely, the revenue is more likely going to be generated by selling weapons. So the weapon industry is going to be very, very profitable this year. We can see a huge demand in the weapons. Also, the employment might be affected a lot. The oil industry is going to increase a lot. And there will be also a lot of expenditure for the kids, infant, and family welfare schemes planned by the government, particularly relating to the infants. And as based on the third house, we have Venus and Jupiter, which means that the defense situation will be pretty good. They'll try to make new innovations in the security system of the country, because the country might likely be attacked due to some external forces this year. And as we have mentioned, that there will be a warlike situation. So there will be a lot of improvement in the security of the country. There will be a lot of paradigm changes happening on in the defense sector. And also the defense budget is going to be pretty favorable this year. For the fourth house, we can see that it contains Ravi, Chandra, and Buddha, the sun, moon, and Mercury, which means that the transportation issues will arise. The public transport as well as the vehicle industry is going to see a lot of changes. And also the vehicle expenses are going to go up this year, particularly for the government. We can see that their transportation expenses, their living expenses are going to increase. The prices are not going to be stable. The accidents might increase. The vehicle accidents might increase in the country. So they have to be cautious while traveling. They have to take particularly safety measures. As for the fifth house, we can see that fifth house Lord Mars is in the second house. So which means that there will be a good economic policy. There will be good advisors. But apart from bringing very good economic policies, they will also try to spend more for the defense, spend more for wars. So the country is more likely to spend more for waging wars. And also the defense security policies will also see a lot of changes this year. Based on the sixth house, we have Rahu in the sixth house, and the sixth house Lord is in the third house. So it shows that there will be an increase in enmity. There will be a lot of diplomatic strains happening around. Many countries might not be favorable to America. Many countries might break up ties with USA. So we can see a lot of diplomatic ties changing in this year. For the seventh house, we can say that the ways which we have to adopt so that we can maintain good bilateral ties with other countries is going to be forecasted based on the seventh house. So it says that USA is most likely to compromise to a lot of situations. It's more likely to, the power withhold is going to shift from USA to some other countries. So USA most likely might be compromising to a lot of situations to maintain diplomatic ties. So they have to try to maintain a mutual understanding with other countries as well. And based on the eighth house Lord is Chandra, which is highly compassed in the fourth house, we can say that the government stability is facing a lot of issues. So this year, apart from the key leaders, we can see a lot of senators as well as a lot of other political leaders changing their positions or changing the way they do work, because there's a lot of political unrest being forecasted and a lot of political instability being forecasted. So the government might not be stable enough. It might not run profitably enough to sustain administration. Based on the ninth house, we can say that as the Lord Sun is in the fourth house, the welfare policies are going to increase. They're going to contribute a lot for the public welfare and also the insurance policies as well. And 10th house Lord in the fourth house, we can say that the administration might be pretty poor, as Buddha being in the bad house, he might not have enough power to run a particular administration issues. And whatever work the government does is going to be pretty slow. It's going to be a lot of lagging in that. The progress is going to be pretty less. The 11th Lord in the third house shows that there will be huge increases in the profits. This year we can see that the revenue is going to be pretty likely very high. But at the same time, the 12th Lord is in the second house. And also Ketu is in the 12th house, which shows that there will be high income as well as high expenditure. There will be particularly expenditure towards the kids And as Ketu is in the 12th house, we can say that infant mortality rate is going to increase this year. And also, some likely viral diseases might affect children a lot apart from the adults. So child healthcare policies have to be carefully studied for this year, and also children's health has to be taken care of with pretty careful nature. If we have a study of the natural calamities which are more likely to happen this year based on the transit of the Jupiter and Saturn, for particularly this year, Jupiter is in Aticharam. Aticharam means moving pretty fast in the average motion. The average motion of Jupiter is generally like 5 minutes per day. So, but in Aticharam, it travels more than that, than the average speed or the average velocity. So it is traveling at around 10 minutes to 13 minutes per day, which is a lot, which is like 2 times its average speed. And also Saturn is in also Aticharam this year for a long time. And in Aticharam motion, he's transiting from Capricorn to Aquarius. And also Jupiter in a high speed velocity, he's transiting from Aquarius to Pisces. And the Saturn is also in a retrograde motion. So he's in a retrograde motion for around like 5 months this year. And based on these events, we can say that as Jupiter is in Aticharam, or is traveling more than its average speed for a long time, it increases destruction to auspicious events. So whoever is planning for auspicious events like marriages or thread ceremonies or housewarming ceremonies this year, you have to be pretty cautious enough, try to plan well in advance, try to take pretty safety measures, because there will be a lot of obstacles coming around you, and there will be a lot of delays happening around, a lot of frustration also increases. And also the journeys might not be favorable a lot. Either it might be a political journeys or business journeys or regular travels. The travels might not be profitable enough. Travels might bring in some unknown bad problems. So there will be a lot of situations based on travels. And also this year particularly, the astrologers also have to be careful because Jupiter is traveling at a high speed than its average speed, which means that those working in the religious sector, whatever religion it may be, those working in the religious sector have to be very careful this year. They have to make sure that they're studying properly, they're trying to follow their rules and regulations as far as their scriptures, and trying to lead a disciplined life. And the Mars transiting this year is staying for around 4 months in Vrishabha Rasi, which is Taurus, from November to Mars, which means that during the period from November 2022 to March 2023, these 4 months, as Mars is stagnant, he's in a stagnated motion in Vrishabha Rasi, in Taurus, the wars in the global scenario might increase a lot. There's a lot of political unrest happening in the global scenario. A lot of countries might end up in a war-like situation. The Saturn transit is in the Dhanishta Nakshatram, which means that the prices are more likely going to be affected. A lot of industries might see huge losses. The prices are going to come down. And there will be like a drought kind of situation sometimes. Also, a lot of political unrest is going to be happening. And also, public might fear when a war might happen. The people are going to fear a lot. They're going to live a very unhappy life. And the Saturn transit in Capricorn shows that there will be a lot of troubles from enemies happening around, and also the countries might be attacked by the surrounding neighbors a lot. Not just based on the present Ukraine and Russia situation. These kind of events are more likely to happen in the coming year. And also, the Saturn being in a retrograde motion in the Dhanishta Nakshatra shows that the soldiers have to be very careful in their duties, because particularly for this year, the Dhanishta transit of Saturn and the retrograde motion of Saturn and the Makara transit of Saturn, it all shows that there will be a lot of fear from enemies happening around, and also the religious activities have to be followed with strict discipline. And there will be a lot of population loss from the religious sector as well as the medical sector. So a lot of people who work in the medical industry, they might face a lot of troubles, a lot of obstacles, and also the religious industries. So these two sectors where people are working, they have to take a lot of cautious security measures. We might see a lot of mortality rate happening in doctors. We might lose a lot of doctors. We might lose a lot of medicine people working in the medical industry. So they have to take very cautiously health measures so that they try to maintain a healthy life. And also the political situation is going to be pretty bad. There might be a lot of losses for them. And as it is retrograde in Dhanishta Nakshatra, the soldiers are more likely going to be affected due to wars. They might not have a happy life this year. Whoever is working as a soldier, they're going to see a lot of bad situations. They're going to have to work a lot. There might be a very strenuous job for them for this year, and also a lot of instability. And as Jupiter being in the third house from Saturn, whenever Jupiter's retrograde motion brings him back from Aquarius to Capricorn, Jupiter will be in the third house in Pisces from Saturn. So this particularly shows that a lot of areas, particularly the southern part of the country, we can say like Southern California, New Mexico, Texas, or Florida, or Nebraska, Alabama, for all these, Louisiana, for all these states, there will be a lot of population decrease, a lot of migration happening from those places. Also, those places are more likely to suffer from the pandemic, whichever is going to happen. Because based on the transit of Jupiter and Saturn, we can say that the health situation of the public might not be in a pretty good shape. We can see a lot of health disasters happening. And also the mortality rate will be pretty high. The death rate is going to increase a lot this year. So a lot of safety measures have to be followed, and the government should be, as it is being informed well in advance, the government has to take care of particular safety measures so that it can lead a good social life and the citizens can be leading a happy life. Apart from this, the other events which we have this year are, so we have a Vastu Kartri. Kartri means based on the transit of the sun, some construction activities might not be followed, should not be followed. So from May 8th, the sun is transiting till May 29th. So the sun transit, we can say that during those dates, as he transits in the Bharani Nakshatra, Kritika Nakshatra, no new construction events should be taken up. There's no combustion of Jupiter this year. If you consider the Venus combustion or Sukramodami, it's from September 15, 2022 to December 2nd, 2022. Combustion of a planet is nothing but the helical setting and helical rising. So a planet which sets obviously rises. So the helical setting of Venus is happening on September 15th. It's setting in the east and it's rising in the west on December 2nd, 2022. So during those time, it's not highly favorable for marriages kind of situations. And based on the Jupiter transit, as it's transiting to Pisces on April 13th to the Mena Rashi, there's a Pushkaram for Pranita Nadi. Pranita is a river. It's a pretty small river in the Telangana state in India. So for this year, based on the Jupiter transit, the Pushkara Purusha will be in the Pranita river. So whoever want to take a holy bath, they can do so. It's particularly located in some cities as Bellampalli, Annaram, Sirsi, Jangon, Kaleswaram. So if you try to just Google up, you can get these location details for the Kaleswaram area or the Pranita river. And also there are 4 eclipses happening around in this year. So the first one is a solar eclipse. It's on April 30th, 2022. But this is not visible in the USA. So no kind of religious rites or rituals have to be followed on that day. And on May 16th, there's a total lunar eclipse. This is particularly visible in USA. And apart from USA, it is also visible in Greenland, Canada, America, Mexico, South America, Antarctica as well. And some parts of Africa and Europe, like France, Sweden, Germany, Russia, and Saudi Arabia as well, in the Gulf areas as well. So this total lunar eclipse is particularly visible in all these countries, and religious rites have to be followed. There will be a separate episode on the timings of this lunar eclipse, and also at what time these particular rituals or meditation kind of things, sacred worship, is to be followed. There will be a separate video on that well in advance apart from the eclipse time. And the third eclipse is a solar eclipse happening on October 25. So this as well is not visible in the USA and Canada as well. It's not visible in the Western Hemisphere, but it is visible in India, China, Mongolia, Russia, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, and like most parts of the Gulf region, in the UAE as well, in UK and Europe, and some parts of Greenland as well. But this is not visible in USA, so people residing in USA and Canada don't have to worry about this eclipse. And the fourth eclipse is another total lunar eclipse. This is on November 8, 2022. This is particularly visible in China, Japan, Russia, Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, India, USA, Greenland, New Zealand, Mexico, Canada. So for this eclipse, again, some religious rites have to be followed. So there will be a separate episode on this eclipses, and in that you can try to see at what time it is visible in which region and what rites have to be followed. So these are the planetary phenomena happening this year. So now moving on to the Rasifal, Gocharfal, or the transit results for all the zodiac signs. So before that, there's a Kandaya Fal. Kandaya means it's 1/3 of a year, so it's like for 4 months. So there's a particular calculation by which we can know that how likely are these 4 months going to be for particular people born on a particular star. As per the Hindu traditional astrology, we have 27 stars. So people born on those stars, there will be 3-digit number. The first digit indicates for the first 4 months, the second digit for the second 4 month, and the third digit for the last 4 months. So you can say it's like a triannual or a quadrimester kind of number. So each number denotes how likely the situation is going to be on average for that 4 months. This is just should be taken on average. It shouldn't be taken too much consider for the self horoscopes. So the Kandaya Fal for Aswini, it's 522, Bharani 004, Kritika 311, Rohini 623, Mrugasira 100, Ardra 412, Punarvasu 724, Pushyami 201, Aslesha 513, Makha 020, Pubba 302, Uttara 614, Hasta 121, Chitta 403, Swati 710, Visakha 222, Anuradha 504, Jyeshtha 010, Mula 323, Purvashada 600, Uttarashada 112, Shravanam 424, Dhanishta 701, Satabhisham 213, Purva Bhadra 520, Uttara Bhadra 002, Revati 314. So for each of these 27 stars, I have told 3-digit number. So the first number is for the first 4 months, just like I said, the last number for the last 4 months, the second number for the second 4 months. So what do they denote? How to decode them, how to understand them. So how to interpret them is Adisunye Mahavyadihi, Madhyasunye Mahabhayaha, Antyasunye Mahahanihi. So if you have a 0 in the first digit, it means you might be affected with some health issues in the first 4 months. If there's a 0 in the second digit, it means that you might be having a lot of trouble, fear from enemies, a lot of obstacles happening around in that second 4 months. And Antyasunye Mahahanihi. So if there's a 0 in the last 4 months, it means that you're more likely going to suffer from obstructions as well as from the enemies as well. And some unforeseen natural events are likely going to happen to harm you. So you have to be particularly trying to take a lot of safety measures in that 4 months. And these results are for if you have a 0. But what if you have an even number or an odd number? Besi sankhya dhanalabham samasankhya samaphalam sunya sankhya sunya phalam means. So if you have an odd number, it means it's going to increase your profit. Dhanalabham means increase in financial life, increase in profits in the business or job. And if it's an even number, it means just an even result. So it's just going to kind of be like a sailing boat, a smooth going life without any obstacles, so leading a happy life. And I have already mentioned the results, how to interpret if it's a 0. So these are the Kandaya Phal or the Quadrimeter Phal. And now moving on to the Rajapujya, Avamanam and Adaya Vyaya for these 12 Rasis. So the Hindu scriptures for these almanac writers, there are some sutras or principles based on those which you can say, how likely are people going to treat you well? That is Rajapuja, how well they're going to receive you, how well they're going to communicate to you. And Avamana, how people are likely going to differ from you. How likely are they going to differ from you and also obstruct you in many different ways, or how well they might spread bad rumors about you. So this is called Rajapuja and Avamana. Rajapuja is a positive thing, having friendly nature, and Avamana means how people are trying to obstruct you in many ways. And Adaya Vyaya means income and expenditure. So I'm going to read out for all the 12 zodiac signs. And keep in mind that these are for the sidereal zodiac signs, not for the tropical zodiac signs. So these are not the sun signs which is generally followed in Western astrology. This is a unique system, particularly for the Indian Vedic astrology, which is completely different from the way the astrology is followed in all the other countries. India is the only country which follows the sidereal system of astrology, which is based on the moon sign at the time of birth you have, based on the sidereal moon. So if somebody doesn't know your sidereal moon, you can search it up online. There are many websites which provide the sidereal moon signs if you try to search, or if not, you can just contact me so I can try to inform you what your sidereal sign is. So for Mesha Rasi, Aries, for Aries, Mesha Rasi, Rajapujya 1, Avamana 7, and Adaya Vyaya is 2 and 8. For Taurus, Vrishabham, Rajapujya Avamana is 4 and 7. For Adaya Vyaya is 11 and 14. For Gemini, Mithun Rasi, Rajapujya Avamana is 7, 7, and Adaya Vyaya is 14, 11. And for Kataka Rasi, Cancer, Karkatakam, Rajapujya Avamana is 3 and 3. Adaya Vyaya is 8 and 11. For Leo, Simha Rasi, Rajapujya Avamana is 6 and 3. Adaya Vyaya is 11 and 5. For Kanya Rasi, Virgo, the Rajapujya Avamana is 2 and 6. Adaya Vyaya is 14 and 11. Tula Rasi, Libra, the Rajapujya Avamana is 5 and 6. Adaya Vyaya is 11 and 4. For Scorpio, Vrishchika Rasi, Rajapujya Avamana is 1 and 2. Adaya Vyaya is 2 and 8. For Sagittarius, Dhanu Rasi, Rajapujya Avamana is 4 and 2. Adaya Vyaya is 5 and 14. For Capricorn, Makara Rasi, Rajapujya Avamana is 7 and 2. Adaya Vyaya is 8 and 8. So it's kind of like an equal balance situation. Whatever you get, you try to just spend it. And for Aquarius, Kumbha Rasi, Rajapujya Avamana is 3 and 5. Adaya Vyaya is 8 and 8. For Pisces, Meena Rasi, Rajapujya Avamana is 6 and 5. Adaya Vyaya is 5 and 14. But do keep in mind, these are just an average forecast of how your expenditure and income is likely going to be. So for those Rasis which expenditure is far higher than the income you make, just try to have a control over the expenses which you try to make this year. Try to have a good foresighted financial planning. Try to keep your expenses at bay so that you can at least save some sort of money, which will be highly useful for the future. So these are the Rajapujya, Avamana, and Adaya Vyaya. Next, moving to the Gochar Phal, the transit results of planets for all the 12 zodiac signs. So these are to be interpreted on a very general kind of forecast situation, because what the Jyotish Shastra says is Dashabahara Ashtakavarga Gochare Graheshu Nrunam Vishamasthiteshvapi Japech Tat Pritikaraihi Sukarmabhi Karoti Shantim Vratadana Vandanaihi. So for any particular event which is likely going to happen, or which has already happened, or which might happen, or which you want to happen, which you want to make happen, for all these sorts of different events in life, how can we try to identify them, and how can we change them if they're not favorable, and how can we well utilize them if they are favorable? How are they to be decoded? So this is based on the personal horoscope which you have, based on the date and time of birth and the place of birth, which are the details you particularly have. So the birth horoscope is a pretty key thing which try to showcase your past life as well as the upcoming future life. So based on that birth horoscope, the dasha and vidasha of the planet denotes a lot of key events which are likely going to happen, or the drudha karma. And the gochara ashtakavarga denotes the adruda karma. And the yogas, the different planetary combinations which you have in the horoscope, they denote that drudha karma, or a likely or unlikely happening event. And for all these three, we have to analyze based on the birth horoscope as well as the prasna time, how well the situation might be, how well the individual life might improve. Either it might be financial life, or as per the career, or the marriage life, the love life, or the family life, children, or the expenses, the income, and also how the relationship with parents, with friends, with siblings, with other family issues. All these different kinds of things are going to be interpreted from the horoscope and ashtakavarga as well. And if this ashtakavarga or gochara, or the planetary transit which we're going to see now, if that is not in a favorable situation, japecha tat pritikaraihi sukarmabhi karoti shantim vratadana vandanaihi. So if particular transit is not favorable to your zodiac sign or to your birth ascendant or your horoscope, what to do, how to overcome that bad situation? It is japecha, to do some holy mantra recitation, tat pritikaraihi sukarmabhi, doing good works like kind of charity, helping others, helping the needy people is always a good thing. And karoti shantim vratadana vandanaihi, and also taking part in Vedic rituals, doing particular Santi homas, and taking particular in some festivals, or doing any vrata homas. These are likely going to bring a positive nature into your life. So they can try to remove the obstacles which are likely going to happen. So these transit results are just based on the transit of the planets of the Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu and Ketu. So these should not be considered just as a complete picture of what's going to happen. These have to be studied in parallel with the birth horoscope. Based on that, we should try to tally out the odds and events and then predict how likely a thing or a situation or an event might happen. So for Mesha Rasi, the transit of Jupiter is in the 12th house, which might increase your expenses a lot. The transit in the 10th and 11th house is highly favorable. You'll have a lot of job changes. You might try to change from a job to business, or you might even be changing your job to a different company as well. And the 11th transit of Saturn in the Kumbha Rasi, whenever Saturn transits in the Kumbha Rasi, Aquarius, it is highly favorable. It particularly brings profits. Whoever is owning a business, you can see that your employees are working with wholeheartedly, and also they're working in a positive motion so that they can try to increase the profits you have. The public relations will be pretty good. The 11th house transit of Saturn is particularly good for the politicians. You can maintain good public relationships. It's highly favorable for your career as well. The transit of Rahu, or the moon's north node in Janma Rasi, that is in Mesham itself, in Aries itself. This is pretty bad. Particularly, you might try to be in a defensive kind of situation all the time. You might always have to negotiate or try to compromise with situations. And also there will be like a fear from happening of events. You might always be in a situations where you'll be in a tense kind of state, whether this event is going to happen or not. So this kind of tense situation is likely going to be there. And the Ketu transit in the 7th house, it is particularly bad as it tries to increases your enemies a lot. So you have to try to be careful with who you're interacting with and with who you are living with as well, so that they might try to involve in your day-to-day life. And this is a particularly bad kind of situation. So overall, if we consider the 11th and 10th house of transit is particularly okay, but the transit of Jupiter and Rahu Ketu is not at all favorable. So you have to be pretty devotional towards these three planets, particularly You can do Vishnu Aradhana, also some Durga Aradhana as well, because these both help in overcoming the obstacles created by Jupiter and Rahu Ketu. Next, moving on to Vrishabha Rasi or Taurus. It's kind of a pretty favorable situation this year. The 11th house of Jupiter transit is pretty favorable for employees as well as those doing in businesses. The profits are going to increase a lot. The career and the life is going to be pretty happy. The 9th transit of Saturn is going to bring up many health issues, but the 10th transit of Saturn in Kumbha Rasi is pretty favorable. The 12th transit of Rahu transiting in the 12th sign, is going to bring up a lot of obstacles and problems, pretty small issues, which might frustrate you very now and then. And the 6th house transit of Ketu is pretty good for the family life, as well as, though you might experience many obstacles this year, there will still turn out to be a positive events in the near future. So you'll be likely benefiting from them. So the financial life is going to be pretty good as the 11th house transit of Jupiter. So you can see a lot of increase in your finances. You can plan pretty well for your future savings or buying huge investments. Career is going to be pretty stable. The job life or the business life is going to be pretty stable. The family life is going to be pretty happy. But for health, you might have some health issues this year. So you have to take care of your health a lot. Try to maintain a good diet. Try to do some good exercises. The travels will be pretty favorable this year. As far as the remedial part is considered, Saturn transiting in the 9th house as well as the Rahu transiting in the 12th house is pretty bad. So you should try to worship Shiva as well as Durga a lot. So this can reduce the obstacles faced by the Capricorn transit of Saturn and the Aries transit of Rahu. So as far as the Gemini Midhuna Rasi is considered, the 10th house transit of Jupiter is particularly bad for the career part if we consider. The job life may not be pretty even. You might face a lot of obstacles in your job life. The colleagues might not be favorable to you. You might have to face a lot of stress, work overtime. Even then, the authorities or your boss might not be favorable towards your work. You might not be appreciating it. So there's a lot of work kind of stress happening around and a lot of changes in your work life as well. You might change jobs pretty often. There'll be and the 9th transit and 8th transit of Saturn in the Capricorn as well as the Aquarius, it's not at all favorable as it tries to increase your diseases. And the Ashtama transit, the 8th house transit, is particularly pretty bad. So this year you have to be a lot conscious about your health life as well as the travels. You have to be pretty careful in your day-to-day life traveling. The 11th house transit of Rahu is particularly favorable for financial life. So though you have huge expenses, though you'll be frequently changing jobs or a pretty unstable job, you'll still make a good amount of money this year, but the expense also will be pretty high due to the 5th transit of Ketu. So apart from Rahu, Guru, Shani, and Ketu, all these three planets, the Jupiter, Saturn, and the Moon South Node Ketu, all these three are not favorable. So you have these Mithuna Rasi people have to be pretty careful. They should try to worship a lot Vishnu, Shiva, as well as Durga. Moving on to Karkataka Rasi, Cancer, we can say that the 9th house transit of Jupiter is particularly favorable. It's in the 9th house, causes pretty huge profits, a lot of luck, just the situation favoring you. Those who are like struggling a lot since the past year to try to get a new job or to try to find a stable career, to try to lead a happy family life, or those who are trying to look for a good married life, who are trying to look for matchmaking, they might not be finding a good bride or a bridegroom. But as this year, particularly when Jupiter is transiting in the 9th house, it is a very favorable situation for your job life, for your career, and also for maintaining a good family life, for your love life. You can try to be in a relationship. It's more likely to get married if you're unmarried. And also, the 8th house transit of Saturn is happening in Aquarius for a long time, and all the seventh house transit in the Capricorn as well. These two are not favorable. So though luck favors you and though the career and financial life is pretty good, the health might not be pretty good. So you'll be facing a lot of health issues. You have to take care of your health. Try not to get infected with any diseases, because if you get infected due to the transit of the Saturn being not favorable, it takes a lot of time to cure diseases. The 10th house transit of Rahu, it increases your expenditure, and the 4th house transit of Ketu, you might have to face issues with the public people, and people might not favor you a lot. People might try to argue frequently with you. So try to maintain a good relationship with people and try to talk as less as possible. Try to mind your own business, which we can suggest for Cancer, because Jupiter is the only favorable planet. So if you try to increase the Guru Balam, the Jupiter strength, you can try to nullify all the other events. So try to recite the Vishnu Sahasranama, Vishnu Deva Aradhana, or like Sri Rama Nama Japa, or any other thing related to the deity Vishnu, Venkateswara Swami Aradhana, all these Balaji Aradhana, all these things, any deity related to Lord Vishnu is going to bring a lot of positive events in your life. Moving on to Simharasi, Leo. You can see that the 8th house transit of Saturn is particularly bad. Ashtama Guru Sancharam is going to increase your expenses to an unexpected height. So try to be prepared. Try to plan well in advance how well you're trying to control your expenses, because it might be a pretty problematic situation this year and you might be ending up in a lot of debt. So try to control your expenses. And the 7th house transit of Saturn is not at all favorable when the Saturn is transiting to Aquarius. But the 6th house transit of Saturn in Capricorn is pretty favorable for your financial career. It brings up huge profits in your life. The 9th house transit of Rahu, it increases your enemies. And the 3rd house transit of Ketu, it is pretty favorable because it increases a lot of luck. So though you're in a problematic kind of situation, though you might be having an unstable job, the favorable transit of Saturn and Ketu will help you in many kind of problematic situations. But as Guru Bala is pretty less, this year you have to try to worship Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu as much as possible, as far as possible. So Vishnu Aradhana, Shiva Aradhana, and also Durga Devi Aradhana are highly prescribed for this Simharasi. Ashtama Guru brings a lot of unforeseen health issues, not just to you, to your family members as well. So try to lead a good, healthy lifestyle, and also try to have medical checkups well in advance so you can avoid any mishappenings or issues. Moving on to Kanya Rashi. Virgo, we can say that the 7th house transit of Jupiter. In the last year, you might have observed that Jupiter transiting in the 6th house and also Saturn transiting in the 5th house. A lot of people or a lot of couples who have planned for getting kids, they might have faced many issues. But this year, the 7th house transit of Jupiter and also the 6th house transit of Saturn, both are very, very favorable. So your job life, career, work life is going to be pretty balanced. You can see a huge gain in your finances. From business, you can profit a lot. And also your health is going to be pretty stable. The family life is going to be pretty stable because the 7th house transit of Jupiter, it brings up many auspicious events happening in your life. It brings up many auspicious activities. And all the surrounding people are going to favor your business or your work, so that they try to help you, they try to get along with you. So the Kanya Rashi is going to have a pretty good life this year. And the Rahu transit in 8th house, Ketu transiting in the 2nd house, it might bring a few financial issues where though you make a lot of money, there will be some unforeseen expenses happening. And the 2nd house transit in Ketu is particularly increases family disputes. So though you might be having a good life with your spouse, there will be frequent quarrels happening. The family disputes might increase. So try to see them well in advance so that you can try to avoid them. And be prepared for those happening so that you can try to control those likely events. So the family life, you have to try to balance it because it's going to be in a pretty frustrating situations, and there will be a lot of trouble and enmity increase. But as the Jupiter is highly powerful, transiting in the seventh house, though you might face many problems, you'll still overcome all those problems. So the Kanya Rasi is particularly good this year. The worshipping of Jupiter, that is for Vishnu Aradhana or Dakshinamurti Ishvara Aradhana, brings up very many favorable events happening in your life. You'll see a lot of new changes in your life, in your career. Tula Rashi. Tula Rashi, Libra, there's a sixth house transit of Jupiter. It's pretty bad because it tries to just increase a lot of obstacles in your life. So whatever you try to do, the luck might not favor you. Though you try pretty hard, you might not get the job which you like. Though you try pretty hard in your studies, you might not improve in your education. Though you try to run a good, successful business, maybe due to the competitors, your business might be at stake because you might not be well placed comparable to them. So unforeseen incidences, a lot of obstacles and problems are more likely to happen this year for this Libra Tula Rashi. So they have to be pretty careful because the sixth house transit of Jupiter is not at all a good thing. It might bring breaks to your education. It might bring a career breaks. You might be a jobless for some time. You might be penniless for a lot of time. Your business might fail. So a lot of negative kind of situations are likely going to happen. And apart from this, the fourth and fifth house transit of Saturn also brings up many issues, health issues, some issues with the kids, like the family life might not be favorable. Your kids might be affected with ill health for a long part of the time. So the family life also have to be taken care. And the seventh house transit of Rahu and the first house transit of Ketu, you'll be pretty tense, always in a fiery situation. Don't know how likely good things are going to happen. And the seventh house transit of Rahu will increase the enmity. People might not be favorably disposed towards you. People might react in an awkward nature. They might be pretty against you and aggressively towards you. So the friendly relations are likely going to be affected this year. So for Tula Rasi, particularly Tula Rasi, all the four transits are not at all favorable. So this Rasi people, it's better that you get your horoscope checked up because the transit results, as I said earlier, they're just an general forecast of how likely an event is going to happen. But the birth chart is the thing which makes us go precisive in nature, so we can see what exactly the problem might be and how to avoid it. So the Libra Tula Rasi people have to give their horoscope reading on. Also, they have to take many safety measures so that they can lead a happy life. Otherwise, the Gochara transit is pretty unfavorable for them. They have to mainly do Vishnu Aradhana, Shiva Aradhana, Durga Aradhana, as well as many other things as per their horoscope is considered. So try to be safe. Try not to get into any kind of troubles, because if you do, it's gonna move your life in a pretty wrong direction. Next, Vrishchika Rasi. So for Vrishchika Rasi or Scorpio, the fifth house transit of Jupiter is pretty favorable, particularly for children and family life. You can see a lot of new changes happening, family being very happy. Those who have had family disputes in the past, you might find some good solutions to them, and you might lead a pretty good life, a balanced lifestyle. You can balance your work life as well as your family life, so they don't collide with each other. The transit of Saturn in the third and fourth houses, it's pretty good for financial issues, the third house transit. But when Saturn transits to the fourth house, you might see some health issues, particularly for you. So try to take care of your health, try to lead a good lifestyle. The sixth house transit of Rahu transiting in Aries in the sixth house from Scorpio. So this gives you a well-balanced life, a happy life, though you might have some health issues. Financially speaking, you'll be pretty good, and the career is going to be pretty stable. Family is going to be pretty friendly. So overall, you'll have a very good satisfaction in your life. But the 12th house transit of Ketu, it might bring small problems now and then, but they'll be pretty small and you can try to overcome them. So the transit of Saturn and Ketu is unfavorable for some time. So try to worship Durga Devi as well as Kali, and also you can try to worship Shiva as well. Dhanushu Rasi, that is Sagittarius, it's a 4th house transit of Jupiter. The 4th house transit of Jupiter is highly unfriendly. It brings up a series of problems. Your expenses will be pretty high. Those who are trying to purchase a new house or a new vehicle might not be able to do so due to unforeseen expenses. You might just spending up more money for unnecessary repairs or some other unnecessary expenses. A lot of loss in the business also. You have to be very cautious as well. But the Saturn is transiting in the 2nd and 3rd houses. So the Saturn transit in Makar Rasi in Capricorn, it also adds on to the effects of Jupiter. But whenever Saturn transits to Aquarius in the 3rd house, it starts bringing in profits. So the first half of this year is going to be pretty problematic. It might be a pretty dull situation for your business and career. But the second half, particularly from November, if you see, from November to the next year, March, it's going to be a pretty good business time. You can see increase in profits in that time. The 5th house transit of Rahu, it increases your expenses, and the 11th house transit of Ketu increases your profit. So though it's a pretty problematic kind of situations in the first half, overall you can see a well-balanced profit to loss ratio. So you end up with some savings and some profits by the end of the year. So for this Dhanu Rasi, it's a pretty good transits this year. The Sun, the Saturn favoring, the Ketu is also favoring. So you can see a lot of good events happening in your life, except for the first couple months. Try to be safe, try not to do anything bad. And moving on to Makar Rasi. For the Makar Rasi or Capricorn, they have the 3rd house transit of Jupiter. It increases troubles, unforeseen events, bad events happening in life. The job life might not be satisfactory. You might try to change the job, but you're not getting any good job. The business also is more likely to get affected. Another thing for this Makar Rasi is the 2nd and 1st house transit of Saturn. So you're in a pretty tense state of this Sade Sati or Elinati Seni, we say it in Telugu, or in English you call it as Sade Sati. So it's the 7.5 years of transit which is happening in the 12th, 1st and the 2nd houses of the birth moon sign. So this transit of Saturn is particularly pretty bad. But as the Saturn is transiting in your 1st house or in the Janma Rasi, you might have already faced a lot of issues. But this Saturn is moving on to Kumbha Rasi. So you'll be in the 3rd phase of this Saturn transit of this Sade Sati. So you can see, though you might be facing a lot of problems, you might see some kind of positive things as well in your life pretty late. But considering the transit of Rahu and Ketu in the 4th and the 10th houses, overall, if we consider just like the Tula Rasi or the Libra, this Capricorn, Makar Rasi people are also highly affected this year. These 2 Rasis for this year transit is highly unfavorable. Those people in this Rasis might be facing a lot of problems, a lot of obstacles in life. The situation might not be favorable, however, how hard you try. So it's better that these 2 Rasis get their horoscopes checked up. Try to lead a good lifestyle, try to maintain good health. The financial life is pretty bad for this Capricorn. And Kumbha Rasi. Kumbha Rasi, despite having Elinari Seni or the Sade Sati, the Saturn transiting in the 12th house and the 1st house, and also the Jupiter was transiting in the 1st house last year. So keeping the history in mind, last year might have been pretty bad for this Aquarius and Kumbha Rasi. But this year, though Saturn is going to be transiting in the Janma Rasi, the Jupiter is transiting in the second house is going to help you a lot. It's going to help your financial life a lot. You can see a lot of new changes happening. Good financial opportunities coming on in your way, getting a good job, your business picking up the pace, savings, you can try to increase your savings because you're getting some good profits. So the financial life is going to be pretty improved compared to last year. The transit of Saturn might be affecting you, the way you think. It might try to diminish your thinking. The speed might be reduced. You might be a little less progressive. Try to be very slow in reacting. So you can see that lame in the way you work. It's going to be pretty lame, pretty low, and pretty less progressive, or going to be pretty slow. But though it is slow, due to the favorable transit of Jupiter, and also the third house transit of Rahu is also extremely favorable and increases your profits. It's very, very good for the financial life and also the family life. And the relationships with your siblings and family members, and also with the enemies, it's going to improve a lot. They're going to be your friends. There will be frequent journeys. You'll be traveling a lot this year. The travels will be pretty highly favorable. And also the ninth house transit of Ketu, it might increase your enemies. So the way it increases enemies is the growth which you see in spite of this Sade Sati, the Jupiter and Rahu transit, because it is favorable. The career life is going to improve a lot due to this favorable transit. You can see huge profits coming on. And due to this, the enemies might not be happily disposed towards you. They'll be kind of cruel in nature. They'll be a little jealous of you making good profits. So the enmity with people also will increase. But the solution for that is try not to involve in any kind of unnecessary talks with others. Try not to involve in any bad disputes. Try to be away from such people. And to neutralize those effects, try to always recite the Durga Stotra or Durga Mantra Japa or anything related to Durga Devi Aradhana. That will be highly favoring you. And also for the Saturn transit, considering Shiva Aradhana will be highly favorable. So try not to get over-feared by this Sade Sati, because Jupiter transit as well as the Rahu transit is favoring this year. The Ketu and Saturn are not favorable, so Durga Aradhana and Shiva Aradhana will bring in good results. Now coming to the last one, Meena Rashi. The Jupiter is transiting in the first house, and also the 11th house Saturn transit is moving on to the 12th house. So it's going to be a start of the Sade Sati for the Meena Rasi. And the second house transit of Rahu is not at all favorable, and the 8th house transit of Ketu. So considering this, all the 4 planets are not at all in a favorable situation. The only particular time which it is good is for the Saturn transiting in the Capricorn, but the remaining time whenever Saturn transits to Aquarius, the Pisces people suffer from the Janma Rasi Guru transit, which brings a lot of disturbances in your thinking. You might not be stable in thinking. You might try to take wrong decisions now and then. You'll be taking decisions with a quick nature without any foresightedness. You might move in the wrong direction. You might try to change job or try to move from a job to a business life or a business to a job life. This first house transit and the 12th house transits of Jupiter are not at all a good things in the horoscope. So particularly the first house transit of Jupiter, it might affect your thinking, the way you make decisions. So before taking any serious decisions, life-changing issues, try to take the advice of elders, try to consult few people, and try not to just take any bold decisions without consulting any experienced people, as you might end up in a bad situation due to that. And also the start of the Sade Sati, it might start to increase your expenses, so your savings will try to decrease from this year. So try to maintain a good financial life, as the Rahu and Ketu transit is also not at all favorable in the 2nd and the 8th houses. So this year, try not to take any unnecessary steps in your career or in your family life. Try to take the good advice of your seniors or family and friends. Before you jump into any bold conclusions, try to consult a few people. As the transit of the 4 planets is not at all favorable, it's better you try to do Shanti for Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu Ketu as well. Also try to get your horoscope checked, because as these are general results, if the horoscope is also pretty bad state, you have to take up serious actions for that. So these are the generalized predictions for all the 12 rasis. So basically, the Panchagashravana Hindu almanac rendering has all these kind of things predicting the planetary phenomena, what kind of likely events are going to happen, and how to try to avoid those situations, and how we can try to lead a good life. So this is the socio-economic and political changes which we might see in USA, or particularly in the Western Hemisphere. And also, due to the transit of Jupiter and Saturn, there is more likely an event of some kind of health issues, some kind of new viral infections, some kind of pandemic still continuing. A new wave is more likely to happen. Wars are more likely to increase. So this year is not that much favorable as we might think. So we have to be pretty careful. And also, the zodiac sign results are also covered. So this brings an conclusion to this Panchagashravanam. स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्यः परिपालयन्तां न्यायेन मार्गेण महीं महिषाः गोब्राह्मणेभ्यः शुभमस्तु नित्यं लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु स्वस्ति।